Hey everyone, and welcome straight into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a highly viral, heavily debated piece of source material. It dives headfirst into one of the most infamous conspiracy theories out there, the claim that a secretive cabal of exactly 13 hidden families is literally running the world from the shadows.
Okay, let's just get right into the central premise. The source material argues that basically everything we see on the news, the elections, the global rivalries, economic crashes, is totally orchestrated. The theory is that these 13 bloodlines completely dominate global politics. And it's not by accident. It's supposedly a calculated strategy to steer global decisions while keeping the rest of us completely distracted. So why do they need such an absolute grip on politics? Well, according to the source, controlling the political stage is the only way they can advance a centuries-old agenda without the public ever catching on.
It's pretty fascinating how the source completely reframes our idea of global wealth. Think about it. When we hear the word billionaire, we immediately think of names like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, or Gautam Adani. But the theory claims these famous figures are really just public distractions. The real wealth, allegedly like 99% of it, is actually held by these 13 families. And by keeping their fortunes totally undocumented and in the shadows, they dodge public scrutiny, audits, taxes, the whole shebang. That invisible wealth supposedly allows them to fund massive political operations completely off the books.
So where is all this coming from? The material bases these massive claims on the work of author Fritz Springmeier, specifically his book, 13 Illuminati Bloodlines. Springmeier's research claims these families don't just influence our governments, they operate way above them. The source outlines that their ultimate goal is creating a new world order. And, to add a profoundly dark twist to the whole thing, it claims these families are actually deeply entrenched in satanic worship.
All right, the theory is essentially held up by three main pillars. Let's start with pillar one, political and institutional control.
Let's look at the Astor family first. The video claims that, rather than just bribing politicians, the Astors allegedly placed their own actual bloodline directly into seats of power. In fact, the source boldly claims that former U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt was secretly part of the Astor lineage. And it doesn't stop in the past. It points to modern politics, alleging that the wife of a recent British Prime Minister also comes from this exact same family tree, which the source uses as proof that they are still planting their people at the absolute highest levels of government.
Next up, we've got the Bundy and Russell families, and the source connects them straight to elite secret societies, specifically the infamous Skull and Bones at Yale University. The claim here is that the Russell family literally founded this society for one reason: to groom highly educated students for top-tier American political positions. They point out that former U.S. presidents, like the Bush family, and key advisors like McGeorge Bundy, were allegedly trained within these secretive ranks to make sure the family's agenda was executed right from the Oval Office.
But things get a lot darker when we look at their alleged institutional control. Take the Freeman family. The source describes them as the financial backbone of groups like the Anti-Defamation League, claiming they use their immense wealth to completely ruin and silence anyone who criticizes the Illuminati. And even more shockingly, the text asserts that the Freeman family was the one who introduced frontal lobotomies into the medical field, not to actually cure people, mind you, but as this terrifying illegal experiment in mass mind control.
So you might be wondering, what happens if a politician just refuses to play ball? Well, the source turns to the Kennedy family for that answer. It claims President John F. Kennedy was assassinated specifically because he defied the Illuminati's policies and went off script. The theory frames his tragic death and even the later mysterious plane crash that killed his son not as lone, random accidents, but as highly coordinated strikes by the other families to maintain absolute political discipline across the board.
Okay, but political dominance is really just step one. Let's move right into pillar two, financial and geopolitical manipulation.
The source highlights the Rockefeller family as the absolute perfect example of this financial strategy. The allegation is that the Rockefellers heavily fund U.S. government agencies so that politicians become entirely beholden to them the second they take office, but it's way bigger than that. They allegedly finance universities to literally dictate what gets taught to the next generation. They supposedly fund religious organizations just to buy their silence on controversial issues, and of course, they pump cash into major newspapers and television networks to completely control the public narrative.
And that brings us to how the source views global banking, which is perfectly illustrated by the Rothschild family. The theory claims that the Rothschilds, along with the Rockefellers, actually control the U.S. Federal Reserve. That means they literally print America's money and then loan it back to the government with interest. Beyond just the banking side, the source asserts the Rothschild were the masterminds who orchestrated the creation of the State of Israel after World War II.
pointing directly to the Balfour Declaration as hard proof of their incredible geopolitical power.
Now here's one of the most mind-blowing claims we found. The idea that international rivalries are just a complete fabrication. Publicly, we're told the US and China are bitter rivals, right? But the source claims this is a total illusion. Behind the curtain, they are allegedly cooperating seamlessly, and it's all supposedly brokered by the incredibly wealthy Li family of Hong Kong. The theory even goes so far as to suggest that members of the Li family actually sit on a highly secretive 7-member board that is truly pulling the strings in China.
And apparently this manipulation totally extends to global warfare. The text claims that families like the Rockefellers and the Greek Onassis shipping dynasty actively profit from wars by supplying weapons, oil, and money to literally both sides of a conflict. There's a super chilling anecdote in the source about Aristotle Onassis during World War II. Out of 450 Greek transport ships in a specific area, 410 were sunk by German forces. The 40 that survived completely untouched? Well, the material claims they all miraculously belong to Onassis, heavily hinting at some top-level dark protections.
All right, let's transition to the third and definitely the darkest part of this whole theory. Pillar 3, the occult and ultimate agenda. You've probably heard the phrase New World Order before, right? Well, the source material comes back to this specific phrase over and over again. It points out that major politicians, from the Bush family to various global leaders, have used this exact phrase publicly. It's even printed right there in Latin on the back of the US dollar bill. For the conspiracy theorists cited in our source, this absolutely isn't a coincidence. They view it as hard, undeniable evidence that these families are openly broadcasting their unified authoritarian goal for the entire planet.
And a massive part of this New World Order, according to the text, is strict population control. The theory claims the Illuminati actually controls the pharmaceutical industry and that they actively hide cures for major diseases just so they can keep selling treatments. It also points to an unnamed 10th family in the book, alleging they heavily fund organizations like Planned Parenthood as a secret front for depopulation. Why would they do that? Well, the source bluntly states that these elite families basically view the everyday public as insects and just think there are way too many of us.
The occult side of things is supposedly managed by very specific bloodlines. The material claims that the Collins and DuPont families are directly responsible for permanently embedding black magic and occult practices right into Western politics. In fact, members of the DuPont family are alleged to hold the absolute highest possible ranks in satanic worship, effectively acting as the spiritual directors for the Illuminati's darkest political moves.
Which brings us to the absolute pinnacle of this entire conspiracy, the 13th bloodline. The source describes this as the most hidden, most mysterious family of the bunch. They reportedly hold 0 public political offices, no public business titles. Instead, they just completely control the other 12 families from the shadows. And here's where it gets really wild. It's claimed this bloodline holds the incredibly bizarre belief that they literally carry the genetics of both Jesus and Satan. In their eyes, this makes them the ultimate divine rulers of humanity.
So, we have to ask, why do they need to dominate global politics so thoroughly? While the source claims it's all just preparation, the text outlines that this 13th family is heavily engaged in dark magic rituals, basically waiting for the birth of a dark, messianic figure. In the source, this figure is referred to as the Antichrist in Christianity or the Dajjal in Islam. Their total political and financial control is supposedly just a massive stage-setting operation for this exact figure's arrival.
And where does that leave the rest of us? According to the theory, we are right where they want us, completely distracted. Think about the endless stream of social media, the incredibly confusing and polarizing political theater we see every single day, the constant barrage of entertainment. The source argues that every bit of this is intentionally manufactured. It's a massive blindfold. It's designed to keep us all arguing with each other, so we never look up and see these 13 families preparing for their ultimate endgame. The source ends by really challenging its viewers, and I want to pass that same challenge on to you. We've explored the claims of Fritz Springmeier's theory today, from the political infiltration by the Astors and Russells to the financial stranglehold of the Rockefellers and Rothschilds, all the way to the dark occult preparations of that hidden 13th bloodline. So what you think? Is this intricate web of political dominance just a wild, paranoid fantasy we've created to make sense of a really chaotic world? Or is it a dark, hidden truth that explains exactly why global politics operate the way they do? It for sure leaves you looking at the evening news a little differently. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning what you see.